Welcome to Elijah's Discussion Forum. And what we would like to do is relate to you something of our own experience in this struggle. And believe me, a struggle is what it is, what God intended, and what we need to experience. In fact, he even says in Zephaniah 3:18, he says, I will gather those who mourn the appointed feasts. And if you look at Leviticus 23, the appointed feasts are a picture of the Christian life, step by step. And so it's not a matter so much of living perfectly according to God's principles, but it's more of a matter of struggling and experiencing God, His salvation, His transforming power, His forgiveness, His guidance, and grieving and mourning and stumbling and repenting. Mourning, grieving because of our own failures, and grieving and mourning also because of other people's lack of connecting and experiencing this beautiful God that we would like to be talking about on an ongoing basis with you and many people out there. And we would like this to be a two-way conversation. You can contribute back ideas, thoughts, criticism, help of some kind, prayers, you name it. So anyway, what happened many years ago was that my parents took the two older children of the family and encouraged us to go to church, and would drop us off at church and pick us up and so on. And so it was a Baptist church, and it was one of those churches that happens to believe in eternal security. Once you're saved, you're always saved, at least most of the people. I don't know if all of them did. And it also had a large number of people in it, I believe, who were spiritually dead. They weren't really living out the Jesus-powered life. They had more of an outward form of religion. It was more of a do-it-yourself kind of thing, including the pastor. I think he was really kind of from what I can recall, a fairly confused and lost person when it came to really relating and sharing and teaching the gospel message. But there were probably some people in that church congregation who really were experiencing God and had something to really share and impart to each other by the Spirit of God within them. And I myself would have been smart and wise if I had, so to speak, glommed on to them and ignored the other dead ones. I mean, in other words, don't waste a lot of time and energy expecting to get much from them. Of course, we have some obligation to everybody around us, including dead people, spiritually dead, of other false religions and so on. Even murder, mass murder, or Satanists, you name it. I mean, we have some obligation, but it behooves us to hang out more with people who God can impart His truth to us, and we can see modeled real Christian living. So I'd recommend, if you're going to church, attending anywhere at all like that, be careful about that kind of a thing. So anyway, so we were going to church as young people, and I got baptized a couple times. I was the president of the youth group. I had the key to the church. I could come and go when I wanted to. I attended many services and so on and so forth. But I think I was pretty much spiritually fairly dead. There wasn't much going on with the real life of God. I mean, I did make a real effort at times, and at times I think probably I did experience God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, but it just wasn't enduring and ongoing. And I think the church structure and the ministers themselves were a big part of the problem. If you sit under even if it's a good friend of yours who's a Christian who really knows God and is experiencing Him and can relate the principles and model it to you, that's probably 10 times better to sit under that person than many of these ministers who are semi-clueless and hardly talk about the basic fundamental key principles of the faith, which is, well, it's experiencing that beautiful Jesus, contact with him daily, that those little quiet times. Of course, those little times we spend throughout the day, throughout the week, in the morning, early in the day, it's so important. Then another key would be just simply calling on the name of the Lord. As his beautiful word says, everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. I just do that on a regular basis, just turning to him, calling, connecting, communing, talking to him, turning not just my mouth but my heart, my soul to him, and looking for his will, his peace, his work, his cross. And then another principle would be simply, it ties into the first one, those intimate quiet times, is if we eat his body and drink his blood, we will have life. We need to have an ongoing experience with him, eating, experiencing him, relating to him, his words, his life, connecting with his soul, talking to him, and then allowing him to talk to us, to put thoughts in our head and to help us think things through. And then drinking his blood. Experiencing, I think maybe there's two aspects to the blood. There's, on the one hand, there's the cross, the crucified Christ, but also the crucified us, to ourselves, to the world, to doing it on our own, or doing it according to somebody else. And then there's his cross that results in resurrection, forgiveness, and bridges the gap between us and God, and provides the opportunity for us to have a relationship with God himself, the Creator, with Jesus, and to have an intimate relationship with this God, and to have his Spirit within, and to have an intimate ongoing communion and a sense of direction and correction and transformation, and so on and so forth. And another aspect to one of these keys of this beautiful kingdom would be everyone who is joined to the Lord is one spirit. And if you look at many of the translations, they add a word, one spirit with him. It's not per se in the Greek. You might think it's you might look at it and figure it's implied, but you know what? One spirit with him, with his body, his family, with his work, with his love, his peace. One spirit. So those are some of the principles. So anyway, I finally tried to prove out if Christianity was really from God, kind of test it, prove it, find a bunch of evidence. Somebody said there's proof for it. So I start trying to find it, and then I thought, well, the best way to prove it out is maybe I better just stop believing. So I stopped what little faith I had, which wasn't a whole lot. And I kept trying to prove it one way or another, if the Bible, if God, if Jesus was indeed the true God and religion and message for man. And then I finally got confused and kind of just quit, gave up, and I just prayed a simple prayer of, God, if you exist. And at that point I didn't even know if God existed, although I wasn't too sure of it my whole life anyway. But I suppose, and maybe I was sure before, sort of, but I finally prayed a prayer like this: God, if you exist and you're good, you're powerful, you're in charge, there's some kind of a reward that you're going to give to us, provide for us eventually, even though we might have to suffer and for quite a while, to quite a degree. Please show me the right religion, give me proof and evidence so I know it's right. I prayed that 3 times, and I waited. I stopped trying to figure it out. I stopped going to church, reading the Bible. And finally, 7 years later, God starts to answer it. And He starts to show me through the end-time prophecies of the Bible. And also, I suppose, in my reading of the Quran, that also made a difference, I believe, at least subconsciously, because I was reading the Quran. I was married to somebody from a Muslim country. I was working in a so-called Muslim country, Turkey, and so I was considering, I was open to any religion as long as it was from God. It was good, there was proof and evidence, and there was some kind of reward eventually. So I'm reading the Quran, and I started reading the Bible, and I was reading just the parts in the Bible about the end of the world for maybe about a year or so. And then in the Quran, I was trying to read every bit of it, every page, page by page by page by page. And so I really couldn't see much reason to believe the Quran. I mean, I was looking for reasons to believe, like prophetic proof, or maybe excellent teachings, or a very coherent, strong message, or whatever combination of things might be in there to point out to me that this is probably from God. But as I read the Bible, the parts in the Bible about the end of the world, and there might be about 200 passages in the Bible roughly about the end of the world, I began to piece together this puzzle of this end time picture, and it became this big mosaic, step by step. I wasn't always sure about the order, but I had some reasonable degree of understanding of piecing the puzzle together of the order, and it was fitting the last 100 years. To a very, very large degree, it looked like it was fitting exactly. And it looked like, as time went on, the situation was fitting it right on schedule. And so I finally, I just was totally flabbergasted about that. And so we had a New Year's Eve party, and we had Turkish and American people, military people and so forth over. We had food, we had some alcoholic drinks, and candy and whatnot. And I got a little bit tipsy, and I was telling one of my American friends about how it was so amazing that the Bible predicted the end of the world, and it seemed to spell it out step by step and all this stuff. And I didn't even believe in God yet. I hadn't even been converted. But when you start drinking, it can do things to your tongue and your thinking. So this is the end of part 1 of a 2-part series of our struggle, our bio, and highly recommend you consider checking out the final part. We hope you're having a great day and that this has been a blessed experience. You may contact us on Facebook or at GPR Plus 45 Days 2023 NXT@live.com.